Welcome, welcome. Friends, today's going to be a short meeting, mercifully so. We're going to be talking with Rebecca Curtis of the A.R.T, who will go over some of the things that the A.R.T discussed on the city's arts call last Friday. I'm just going to give us a second to let a couple more people come in. Hey, Rebecca. Excellent, excellent. Sorry, I'm still seeing a lot of people come in, so I just want to give us another minute to get critical mass since this will be a short meeting. Excellent, excellent. Welcome all. Welcome, welcome. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. We're going to have a short and abbreviated meeting today. We're going to be talking with Rebecca Curtis from the A.R.T. Some of you have heard this already, so apologies for the repeat. But Rebecca will be sort of giving us a recap of the report from the A.R.T. from the city's call. Have a chance to ask a couple of questions. Please, I ask for your patience, right? There's so much going on. There's so much, I'm sure, that she knows, so much that is still to be discovered. So, right, manage expectations. Next week, we're gonna talk with the Davids from Arts Emerson, working on a couple of other guests for us. Just talking about how they are looking at reopening, how they're sort of future casting the different scenarios and how they are, what are the lessons that they have learned now that they're going to take into the future. So that'll be a little bit about next week's meeting. Friends, Rebecca, if you would, can you wave again so that he can find you?
Hi, everyone.
Hello, excellent. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate this. If you would, can you give us a small recap on what the A.R.T is working on? This is super exciting.
Absolutely. Dawn, thank you so much for inviting me to join the call today. I just wanted to say it's so good to see all of your faces on my screen. I miss being in the same space with you. And I'm just really glad to see you and know we're all working really hard at this time to balance it all and figure it all out. So if little people appear behind me or medium-sized people, needless to say, I'm trying to balance it all and figure it all out. So just out of curiosity, because I suspect that like some of what I can share with you today will be redundant for folks, but some may be new. How many, like who's heard about A.R.T's project with the Chan School so far? Okay, cool. That's helpful. And were any of you able to join the City of Boston call last Friday? That's great. So I'm gonna just pop into the chat the YouTube link for those calls. These are Friday 3 p.m. calls. You may have heard about them. Different presenters every week, hosted by Cara Elliott Ortiz and Diane Paulus and Joe Allen, our partner in this work, had the opportunity to share it last Friday. So this is the whole schmagegi, and they had great things to say. So if you have the 35 minutes to listen to them, I encourage you to check it out. But for those of you who haven't heard yet, among the many things that we all are working on at this time, A.R.T is partnering with a professor of exposure science named Joe Allen. He's the director of the Healthy Buildings program at the Chan School of Public Health at Harvard, to work on a roadmap for recovery and resilience for theater. We know lots of different entities are working on lots of different ideas and plans in our community and the national community at large. We're not offering this up as the only way forward, but as a potential way forward. for all of us to draw from. And the intention is for this roadmap to be a framework of guiding principles and general guidance that will live on the A.R.T website in our public health section. The initial framework we expect will launch in the next 5 to 7 days. And it will be updated continuously as the science progresses, as we learn more, as we develop more of our thinking. The intention is to cover the spectrum from rehearsal practice, performance practice, building facilities, maintenance, front of house procedures, back of house procedures, all through the lens of exposure science. And then, of course, the A.R.T is thinking about new models, new ways of working ourselves. And so we will put the framework to the test by embarking on our own work and sharing our experiences, the successes and the challenges that we encounter as part of the project. There are a team of folks on the A.R.T side working on this, led by Diane. But our entire staff has been deployed into subgroups, thinking about everything from the patron experience front of house to rehearsal practice. And we're currently bringing together all of the thinking that is happening internally, a lot of good work that's happening externally, spearheaded by, among other places, the Production Managers Forum, and working with Joe and his colleague, Emily Jones, to get this initial framework out within the next week. So that's kind of a rough overview. We, of course, are all thinking about ways that we can be flexible and adaptive. We know that timing and regulations are important ingredients in all of this. We are all awaiting word from the governor about what opportunities we will have and when to gather folks will be. So our approach for now has been to continue to kind of take a wait and see attitude. There's lots of planning and lots of scheming and lots of modeling being done, but we have not, announced a season at this point. We've postponed a couple of shows from last season to the upcoming season. And I guess one other kind of big message I wanted to share about the roadmap and the work that we're all doing is that if Joe were here today, he would say there's no way to eliminate the risk. It's all about mitigating the risk. So it's going to be this confluence of the societal situation, the science, and the steps that we all can take as institutions and as organizations to mitigate that risk. And I'm happy to hear questions and answer what I can.
Rebecca, thank you so much for that. Can you tell us how did the partnership come about?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So we, as you may have heard, A.R.T is in the process of designing a new facility for research and performance in Allston, on Harvard's Allston campus. And public health in general has been a key component of that work. It's a topic that is very much at the forefront of Diane Paul's mind, and the institution's mind, how theater can be a force for public health, and the new space can foster good public health in all of the ways, scientific and communal. And Joe Allen was on an advisory panel working with our architects, Howard Tompkins, based in the UK, to help us figure out how to make sure the A.R.T's new home is a healthy building. And so when the pandemic hit and the A.R.T costume shop staff, like so many of us, started sewing masks, Diane called Joe back up and said, we want to make masks, we want to make sure we're doing it right, we want to make sure they're getting into the pipeline in the right ways. Also, by the way, let's talk about how we can extend our collaboration to help theater find a way back, because we all are feeling the challenges and sort of the order of operations, that obstacle that we're facing. So Joe was a consultant on the building project and is now an integrated partner into this project.
So on the city call and even today, you've talked about testing new kinds of work, right? Innovation. Can you speak a little bit about what that looks like for you all right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's all super preliminary, but we did a project, a tree planting ceremony at the Arnold Arboretum last spring, last April. It was the culmination of Diana O's residency with us, and have been in conversation with the Arboretum ever since about how to extend that collaboration. And so one of the models that we're exploring is what an outdoor experience might be like, that would take place at the Arboretum and would be a collaboration among the Arboretum, which, as you may or may not know, I didn't know until relatively recently, is part of Harvard's community as well. It's actually a Harvard library. And Center for Research. And so one idea we're exploring is a piece that would be created specifically for the Arboretum, that would be a collaboration among the Arboretum and the Chan School. We also have had conversations about what it would look like to move our work, our planned work, to other spaces, to the Arboretum, and lots of other creative thinking. I think, we're all seeing lots of different ideas that are being shared across the country right now. And as some of you may know, my husband is a production manager at A.R.T, and so we're sharing a workspace now. And every week, he and his team are exploring some other model and discussing feasibility. So we're going to cook something up, Diane.
Talking about collaboration, I think in so many of these conversations we are having, right, that the idea of collaboration comes up, and what can collaboration look like? And it means so many different things. So can you speak a little bit about, for the A.R.T, what that might mean for the Boston or New England theater community at large? What are you thinking in terms of collaboration?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not in the artistic conversations, so I don't know what it means just yet, but I think it's something that's on my mind, certainly, being of this community, from this community, and I think very much on my colleagues' minds, given all of the work that happens at Oberon, our club theater space, with organizations like Company One, as well as all the local independent artists that put on shows at Oberon. So certainly collaboration with artists from the community is really quite integral to our work. And in terms of the roadmap, we're figuring out kind of what collaboration under that umbrella might look like as well. We certainly want folks to see the roadmap as a resource. And I think we're exploring different mechanisms for kind of receiving feedback and hearing about test cases. So more on that to come.
Mm-hmm. So with the roadmap, the framework, will it have a framework for organizations who don't own or run spaces?
That's a great question. I think that the intention is for the framework to cover as much of the waterfront as possible. So if you don't own or operate your own space, fantastic. You don't have to worry about how the restrooms might be maintained or the tickets might be collected. But certainly for rehearsal and performance practice,
right.
I think there hopefully will be a lot of useful information for non-facility owners. Diane tried this experiment, speaking of that I think many of us are dabbling in right now. She held a 2-week workshop on Zoom for her musical 1776, her musical adaptation. And you will all appreciate that as a press person who wants to share our news all the time with everyone who will listen, I had a lot of ideas and a lot of eagerness to let the world know that this was happening. And Diane had a lot of trepidation and asked me to wait. She truly didn't know what the first couple of days would be like, what the technology would feel like, whether people would feel all connected, whether it would feel at all productive. And it was remarkable to feel the energy shift in our institution as that workshop began and really took root. And so she found it to be an incredibly productive and fruitful way to accomplish work. Not the same as being in the same room as everyone. It does not replace being in the same room, but there were certain things that they were able to do really, really effectively, incorporating the Harvard scholars that she had plans to bring into the rehearsal process, have deep discussions around the script, the table work. So, that was a really interesting experiment that wound up going a lot better, I think, than anybody had imagined.
Right. It's the sort of, it's the new normal for now and trying to figure out how to do that. So my last question, you spoke a little bit about timeline,
Yeah.
trying to get this up at least to at some point for what, the next 5 to 7 days, the next week. What's the overall like timeline? Do you have a sense?
That's such a good question, Dawn. It's something that I'm asking myself all the time. I think in the microcosm, like we're imagining that updates to the framework could be occurring as regularly as every couple of days. And so, of course, as we're thinking about the design of the site, we're thinking about how we're going to let people know where the information has changed. I know that for me, when I'm reading the news these days, the first thing I do is I look at the publication date on the article, right? Is this something from 3 weeks ago or something that was figured out yesterday? So the living document concept, the updating process, I think is really integral to the work that we're doing in terms of like, are we ever going to say like, here is the final draft? I don't think there's an intent. And what is the due date? I don't think that's really the model. Rather, again, I think it's this convergence of the science, the local, state, federal, CDC guidelines, and our thinking. And so the framework development, I think, will extend as long as it takes.
Are there other local and national partners that you're working with?
You know, we haven't formalized any other collaborations at this point, though there are a number of conversations happening around that. I think the idea at the moment is to keep the collaboration pretty focused on the pair of us and for us to be able to be a test case. But again, the conversations are continuing and I'll keep you all posted.
Of course. So I'm just looking at the chat. I only see one question right now. Rebecca, not sure if you can answer it, but
yeah.
Do you know if this project is going to impact overall decision-making from Harvard about other building closures?
It's a great question, Graham. We so Joe is on one of the working groups, maybe they're called task forces at the Harvard level to make decisions about Harvard facilities, and so I think there is going to be real synergy between what we put out in the roadmap and what's happening at Harvard. Folks may know that the Loeb Drama Center, which is the A.R.T's main stage, is a Harvard-operated building. And Oberon actually is also a Harvard-owned building. So I expect that we will be impacted by the decisions the university makes.
T?
Great. So there are a few more questions in the comment that I will read out now. Let's see if you have any answers to it, Rebecca. Tiny technical question from Pat Gabridge. Do you know what software platform was used for 1776 workshop?
Yes, I do. I'm taking my headphones out because you all switched to my computer. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Pat, we used Zoom. What we were with at the time, it began on April 6th. And we actually put together a collection of learnings from that experience that we posted on our website. Again, the theory that like we're all in a period of sharing information. So if you're interested, take a look there. Good to see you.
Great. And from Josh, we have, could we talk all about the physical changes that Joe was talking about last week? What are we going to have to do to our spaces in order to reopen safely? I don't know if you have any insight.
That's a really big question. Josh, are you speaking about like the ventilation conversation that happened on the mayor's call?
Yourself, feel free to, because I can't find you here.
I got you.
Yeah,
Rebecca, to some degree, like the ventilation, any protocols about staffing or anything along those lines. If I don't know if you have the ability to talk about that, but if you did, I'd be interested.
I've heard conversations about that, but I would hate to misspeak or overspeak. So I think look to the roadmap for that, but it's certainly on our minds. And if there are some specific questions that you have about your space and you want to send those to me, I can put my email address in the chat, and I'll make sure that they get into the mix.
what I would like to, it looks like there are no other questions in the chat. So what I would like to do is actually welcome Emily Ruddock of Mass Creative. Hey, Emily. Emily was fortunate enough to have an audience with the Governor's Advisory Council. No, lies. Unmute yourself and correct me.
I'll definitely do that, Dawn. And it is a tough act to follow, Rebecca, in terms of the work that A.R.T. is doing on this front around reopening. Thank you for sharing. And I think it's, in fact, it's sort of pace setters like the A.R.T. kind of getting out in front of this that's going to be incredibly important to our overall recovery and survival. So Don, I just want to flag two things for the group, if that's okay. So the first one is, so Mass Creative asked for a time to present to the Reopening Advisory Board. And our intent was to put together a panel of folks who represent across the creative sector, including disciplines, including geographic location, including serving culturally specific work. And so we were not given time to present to the main group. We were given time to meet with the deputy chief of staff for the Office of Economic Development. And I say this a lot, and I truly mean it. It's there. Anytime someone gives you the opportunity to talk to them when we're talking about government or elected officials, you say yes, because the staff are, we all know this, right? The staff is what makes things happen. So we did this morning, we had a good conversation. So David Dower and David Howes joined us to represent Arts Emerson. Harold Stewart joined to represent Theater Offensive. We also had Tim and Davi from the Angor Dance Troupe up in Lowell, Joe Thompson from Mass Mocha, and Troy Siebels from the Hanover Theater in Worcester. So again, trying to get a cross section of geography and then disciplines. We weren't able to get, we had a couple feelers out to make sure that we were getting some more music specific organizations, and we missed the mark on that. So a work in progress. But really, you know, I think because we weren't presenting to the main group, the main advisory board basically has a set of questions that they are asking everyone, and they mirror actually the open comments form that's on the website, which I will put a link in the chat box to. It'll come in a couple of minutes. But they're basically like, what is it going to take to get you open? What are the things that are going to stop you from opening? Like, what are the things you are worried about, and what are the questions you have? And so because Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito put out I would say it's like an amuse-bouche of a reopening document yesterday. I'm going to put a link in the chat to that too. And I say that because it is not meant to be a well-detailed document. It is basically like, here's how we're thinking about it. It's going to be a phased reopening approach. We're going to have real clear frameworks for what you need in order to get back open. You will and those are going to be industry specific, sector, it's like genus, phylum, species, right? So it's business, it's industry specific, sector specific, and business specific, right? So they're going to put those frameworks out, and then they already have started to put together the checklist of mandatory things you need to do in order to keep your employees safe. So what was great is because of that timing, we were able to say, like, look, you already put this out, so let's talk about it, right? Like, let's talk about how within our industry, there are multiple constituencies. So like when you say keep your employees safe, for us, that's arts administrators, that's artists, that's contract workers, that's part-time folks who are running, who are running our front of house, like that like keeping our staff safe is a priority, but it is a delightfully diverse group that we are thinking about in that work. And so we wanted to raise that. We also talked about how we as a creative sector are problem solvers, like that's our thing. And that we can, we offered up and said, like, look, you're going to put together these guidelines. We're seeing in other states like Connecticut and Maryland, that they are actually tapping the creative community to say, like, here are our guidelines for businesses. Now help us interpret these for your disciplines. And so we said, like, look, we will do that with you. So, and then the other big thing, and this was really interesting, that, you know, is like, we're all thinking too about how do we keep people safe in a reopening phase, and then a potential like having to pause and close things down again phase. And that we are, even though we are not nearly the largest state in the union, we are regionally different. And, you know, for example, you know, Joe out at Mass MoCA, the Berkshires have basically met all of Governor Cuomo's like 7 signs for like reopening. But, you know, we know in, you know, where I'm sitting, right, like I know that Boston isn't even close. And so that there's a real need to have a regional appreciation for this in terms of thinking about a red, yellow, and green light phasing in. So that was a good conversation. And, you know, the other piece of it, and I loved David Howes in a prep call said, like, what's the point of this call? And I was like, good point, right? It's like, to me, it's the first of many. It's to open the door to a larger conversation. And, you know, I think that's the thing that we really stress here at Mass Creative is like, how do we open the lines of dialogue? How do we educate and inform decision makers about what we need to keep our sector whole? And that's the final thing that I'm just going to say, is that we really impressed upon the deputy chief of staff that we like, look, everybody's already made the case that the creative sector is an engine of the of the Commonwealth's economy, right? It's, you know, if you think about tourism and cultural tourism as part of that, it's the 3rd largest sector for many parts of our for many parts of our Commonwealth. And the other reality, and I would never say this publicly, and I mean, I did say this to her, is like, we're not going to be in the first phase of reopening, right? Like many of the style of work, the reason we do our work is about bringing people together. We are the gathering economy. And so we may not be in that first phase. We might not make it to the second phase, but what important part creative of the economy needs to be protected and safe harbored until we can reopen, so that the economic engine of Massachusetts starts to hum again. And so that's the other piece, is like, you know, that we wanted to talk about with her name was Emily. So that was lovely. So that's my like literally 1.5 hour update from this morning. The folks who joined me for that call, and I will say, you know, there are oftentimes where Mass Creative has the ability to do a big general call and say, please join us in this. And sometimes we have to be a little bit more selective and do some curation. So please do not read into this if you were not included. This is the world we live in. So Arts Emerson joined us, Mass MoCA joined us, the Hanover Theater in Worcester, which is a presenting organization and a youth conservatory, the Angor Dance Troupe, and Theater Offensive, and then this is the one, and I didn't mention this, is the Rose Kennedy Greenway. So Jesse Brackenbury joined us, and again, his perspective as a creative placemaking organization and a public art organization was really, really helpful to sort of round out and say, like, we are many parts of a whole. You might be wondering why there was no museums included in that group. That wasn't necessarily a specific choice, but they did. We know that a number of museums had the opportunity to present directly to the reopening board. And again, Mass Creative's work is about making sure that all voices are represented as much as possible. And so we wanted to make sure that disciplines that hadn't had a chance to present in front of anyone related to the reopening board did. So that's what I got.
That's a lot. That was really great. Thank you so much, and thank you, Emily, for always letting me be like, "Can I put you on? Can I put you on?" I appreciate it, and we appreciate all of the work that you are doing on our behalf.
And my amazing gal Friday, Selassie Davies, is going to pop into the chat the links,
nice.
Which is the standards for the workplace reopening. So there's just one Selassie, there's just one PowerPoint.
Also, kudos on that reference. Gal Friday, one of my favorites. Friends, so that's it. I'm going to give Selassie a moment to pop that into the chat if she hasn't already. Otherwise, that is it for us for today, a shortened, abbreviated meeting. We will be back next week with the two Davids from Arts Emerson, who may have more to say about the meeting that they had with Emily. And like I said, talking to us all about how they're approaching reopening. And I think also specifically, this is one of the things that I'm interested in, because their venues are also part of this university, right? There are a couple of different priorities that they have to weigh. So really interested in hearing them speak about that. Great. It looks like Selassie's going to email me the documents. I will put them out when we send out our usual thank you for everybody. So friends, until next Tuesday, that's it. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Emily, for speaking to us. We appreciate it. Bye all.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank
Bye,
you.
guys. Thank you.
Good to see you guys.